Good evening and welcome to this evening's edition of the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Hello. Have not talked to many of you in the last, 2 weeks. Big news tonight. Big news. We have a Kevin Love sighting. Yes, Kevin Love and Matthew Dellavedova are playing for the Cavaliers, who are currently watching the game here. They're down in Oklahoma City. We'll talk a little bit about Oklahoma City here. Fine place. The Cavs are winning at the moment. I believe 42. Actually, it's tied 42-42. Got the game on behind me over here. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. And been a busy day. Had a great afternoon, morning. My wife and I we went on a shopping spree, and we actually had a group of. We had our house, we live in this condominium, and we had a paint group come out. They did some painting on the interior of the house today, so we needed to be out of the house. And wife and I, Laura, had a wonderful afternoon, did all sorts of fun shopping, spent way too much, but found some really good deals. My son, Grantman, who many of you know is autistic, has he loves things that spin and twirl, spinners, any things like pinwheels. And we were over at Kirkland's today and found a really cool, like oversized painting. It was on clearance, $23. So if you want to find some really cool paintings, go over to Kirkland's. But we found this really cool bit for him. It was a windmill. And so we're going to be putting that up in his bedroom. Very excited about that. He's pretty excited about that. He knows that we're doing the broadcast right now, so he may come in. We'll see. But right now he's out in his bedroom. So welcome again. We've got lots of things to talk about today. It's been a couple weeks since we've talked to you, and a lot has been taking place in the world of sports. It's Thursday. The National Men's Championship game was this past Monday. We're going to talk about that first, also on the women's side of the tournament. Then we're going to dive in. We're going to talk a little bit about the Cleveland Indians, where they stand. Had a big win yesterday. And we'll finish talking a little bit about the NFL draft, what's going on, where the Browns are pick number 26 right now. There have been some movement with other teams moving up in the draft. The New York Jets, of note, just moved up, so we'll talk about that, and then we'll finish with an "Did You Know" segment, which happens to do with a little bit about what we're going to talk about right now, which is with the basketball tournament. Of course, many of you who follow college hoops. I wrote an article a week or two ago for ClevelandSportsTalk.com, great group of writers, and the article was talking about the Great Mississippi and the history that it has with the college basketball tournament, especially on the men's side. And that factoid is that there hadn't been a winner of the national championship game west of the Mississippi River in the last 11 years. So with all four teams in the Final Four west of the Mississippi, it guaranteed that little nugget of information would go by the wayside. So we had Gonzaga in the championship game, undefeated, going up against the Baylor Bears down there from Waco, Texas. And, Indiana Hoosiers last went undefeated. I believe it was back in 76. So that was at risk of being beat, but it was not. And the Gonzaga did not win. They lost the tournament championship to Baylor. And it was Baylor won by 15, 20 points. It was really a dominating performance in the first half by Baylor. Congratulations to the Baylor Bears. I want to talk a little bit about that because they did not get their fair shake after the game, especially with the national media and what folks like to talk about. It amazed me by some reporters and information that came out after the game about how well Gonzaga and the UCLA game in the Final Four semifinal game was really the true championship game. That was the real championship game, according to some of these sports columnists and watching them on the TV. Just nuts, just crazy. And how these folks go about saying that is just ridiculous. I mean, you had Gonzaga that had a great game against UCLA. The game went to overtime. UCLA was on the verge of winning that game. It was a great game. Came down the wire. Gonzaga, Suggs hit a bank shot in overtime to win the game for Gonzaga, to take them to the championship. But to disrespect the Baylor Bears, by the way, Baylor Bears just statistically over the last 20 years have been excellent. Their coach, Scott Drew, has been there for 18 years now. Those first few years down in Baylor, he did not have a winning record. But as the years have gone on, they've become much more successful. And back in 2019, they were very successful. Last year, they had a good run. But, we didn't have the tournament in 2020. So to say that, well, because Gonzaga was tired, I heard that at the beginning of the broadcast on CBS. Some of the analysts were talking about how, well, how would this, Gonzaga was down early. Well, maybe they were tired. Folks, these are basketball players. These are kids that play the game all the time. Yeah, they might have been tired. Baylor might have been tired too. So it's fair. And to not give credit to Baylor is just ridiculous. And I heard some commentator the Tuesday or Wednesday after the game talking again about how, well, Gonzaga and UCLA was really the great game and should have been the championship. Well, it could have been, but it wasn't. So let's give Baylor it's kudos, congratulations. Do have a little bit of info at the end of the show with our Did You Know, that has to do with the Baylor Bears. It was an event that took place back all the way in 1927. I don't know if you were around then, if anybody who's listening, but a little tidbit of info that I think you guys all might find interesting. All right, so let's talk Indians. Wrote an article yesterday after the big Indians win yesterday. Well, big because it's 5 games in, big because the Indians are struggling to score runs, big because I wrote on my social media post, after Salvador Perez of the Kansas City Royals went deep and hit a home run off of our ace Shane Bieber, that the Indians were done. They were going to lose. It was 1-0 in the 4th inning, and I basically turned the game off. I turned it on to the Reds game. Cincinnati Reds, by the way, another great baseball town down there in Cincinnati. They've been on a real hot streak. Former Cleveland Indian Tyler Naquin is on fire down there, and he has, I believe, 13 RBIs, 3 home runs already. So anyway, I was wrong. I posted that, so I feel like my negativity on the Indians going to lose the game turn things around miraculously. Jose Ramirez, the great, finally made contact with the ball, hit a 2-run homer to tie or take the lead early in the 6th inning briefly. That lead did not last long because our pitching was a struggle. We gave up another run, tied the game 2-2. So we go to the 8th inning, and then Jose again goes deep to the right field stands, puts the Indians up 4-2, and secures win number 2 on the season. Those were the first RBIs, the first home runs for Jose Ramirez. I really want to go back to 2018 for Jose, when he had close to 40 home runs, I think 39, had about 105 RBIs in the season. We need Jose to really step up. The Indians have struggled in their first 5 games to score runs. They did score 9 in their one win last weekend against the Tigers when they were playing at Detroit. Now, they have the Tigers coming to town again starting tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes for the Indians. But we rely so much on good pitching by the Indians because right now, our offense, we can't string together a series of hits to get any sort of consecutive runs. We've scored 2 runs in one game, 2 runs in game 2, like we scored the 9, like I said, in the one game we won. We were shut out on our home opener against the Royals back on Monday. So we get the win yesterday. Congratulations to the Indians. The Indians stand at 2 wins, 3 losses. Shane Bieber, our ace, our Cy Young winner, had 12 strikeouts again, dating back to last year in 14 starts that he's had. In 10 of those 14 starts, he has struck out 10 over the last 14 in those 14 starts. 10 times he's done that, over 10 strikeouts, and now he's had 8 strikeouts in those 14 games consecutively in all 14. So that ties for 5th in Major League Baseball history. So again, Shane Bieber doing well, finally got a little support by Ramirez. So congratulations to him. I'm, hoping that the rest of the Indians offensive players decide someday that they're going to put some hits together. Looking forward to seeing what happens tomorrow. It would be great if maybe the Indians could get a little, because of that win the other day and the way that they won it with the late game home run by Ramirez, that maybe that sparks them a little bit. Speaking of sparks with the Indians, I saw this question discussed on social media. Like I said, I write for clevelandsportstalk.com. We've got some great writers there. One of the writers, Natalie, I believe she writes a lot about with the Indians. There was some commentary going back and forth about what the Indians did a couple years ago when they won 22 games in a row. Do you guys remember that? When the Indians won 22 games in a row? Pretty impressive. But which is more impressive, winning a championship, winning the World Series, or winning 22 games in a row? I mean, which is more difficult? You baseball people out there, I've thought about that a little bit over the last couple of days. I mean, both are very impressive. Obviously, I think with the Indians, what is a real stickler with fans is that the Indians have not won a world championship in 73 years. 73 years, folks. 1948 was the last time the Indians won the World Series. So 22 wins in a row is fantastic. And when they were doing it, it was very impressive how they strung those wins together. But it was during the regular season. There wasn't obviously there's pressure every game that you get closer to, 15 wins in a row. Obviously, it's impressive getting the 20 wins in a row, getting the 22. Awesome. How they did that, I think that win number 22, they were losing in that game. They came back late. So very impressive. But as an Indians fan and a lifelong fan of the Tribe, getting that elusive World Series title is really what we're aiming for. So it's been 73 years, folks. I think that's a little bit more difficult, and it would be much more impressive as a Cleveland Indian fan, I think, that they would win the World Series. Congratulations on winning the 22 in a row, but I'd take a World Series any day of the week. So moving on to the Cleveland Browns. So this week, the interesting tidbit of info that came out of the NFL was that Sam Darnold, the darling of the NFL when he came out in 2018, right, was in discussions back in 2018. Would the Browns take Sam Darnold number 1? Because that's when the Browns had the number 1 pick. No, they took Baker Mayfield. So this last week, Darnold was he was traded to the Carolina Panthers. So if you go back statistically and look at this since 2016 to currently, all the quarterbacks that were drafted in the top 5 in the draft, they have all moved on to different teams now. Mitch Trubisky has left Chicago. Jared Goff has gone from the Rams to the Detroit Lions now. Sam Darnold again has gone to the Carolina Panthers. That leaves Baker Mayfield as the only quarterback who is still standing and still with the same team. I even saw a more incredible stat today that going back almost 11 years, dating back to 2009, that Baker Mayfield is the only quarterback, similar statistic, that he's, been with the same team for the longest amount of time. The Baker Mayfield, and it was interesting. Some folks, I wrote this article again the other day for Cleveland Sports Talk, and it was talking about Darnold going to Carolina and how Baker has really, progressed and helped the Browns get to where they are. But this whole idea that, that Baker, I mean, some folks have, when I wrote the article, they were like, well, I'm glad you're on the Baker Mayfield bandwagon right now. And I've been on that bandwagon for a long time. Maybe not right at the very beginning of the season. When I wrote that article way back in September, I talked about, this is the Browns and Mayfield are at kind of a crossroads. But I believe I followed that up with several articles that discussed how, Baker and Coach Stefanski have really come together and formed this solid core that is, determined to get to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. And Baker Mayfield is doing things that we haven't seen since Bernie and Brian Sipe. And if you're a Browns fan, if you're a true Browns fan and you've gone back way in time and you have followed the team for decades, you know that Baker Mayfield is doing things that we have not seen as fans. And he's 23 and 22, had a great last season. Yes, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the kid moving forward, but he's handled it. He's got a great front office. He's got a great coach now who really understands and can communicate with this kid that they're on the same path. So I'm excited to see again what Baker's going to continue to do. What this does for the Browns in the draft, they still Browns draft number 26. How this changes things, it's we'll see what happens. There might be a few teams in front of them, like even the Pittsburgh Steelers, that might be try to jump up and grab one of those quarterbacks that are out there. A lot of people believe that the quarterbacks are going to go boom, boom, boom right at the beginning of the draft. Likely to happen. This kid, Zach Wilson, okay, probably a good quarterback out of BYU, but he's coming out of BYU. There have been good quarterbacks out of BYU. I get that. But, Trevor Lawrence, I'm not sold on Trevor Lawrence. Maybe you are. That's great, but Justin Fields, he was in a lot of pressure games, played for probably the best college program in the country at Ohio State. By the way, Ohio State's the only team that has beaten Alabama and Clemson in the playoff games. I read that little stat, forgot about that. But looking forward to seeing what happens with the Browns in the draft. I put out some players that I think the Browns are looking at. A lot of folks are talking about not the Browns. Are they looking at a linebacker in that first round, defensive end, cornerback? No, probably they're not looking at a linebacker at number's 26, but I'm telling you, I love that kid, Zach Collins out of Tulsa. If he's sitting there at 26, just as a stud athlete, you could transition him to a defensive end. Man, I would love that. So we'll see what happens. I do think the Browns are probably going to go either defensive end or cornerback in that 26 pick. If they hold it, they might trade it away and then maybe back up into the second round, Wouldn't surprise me if the Browns did that. I would be surprised if they would jump all the way, if they'd go up in the draft to grab one of these kids that they've got their eye on. But we'll see. The Browns have got, 8 or 9 picks, and anything's possible. But I think what this does, I don't see it moving the Browns that much as far as placement and where they're going to draft. So I do a couple of players that stood out. One of Todd McShay from ESPN came out last week and has the Browns taking the Gregory Rousseau out of Miami. There's the kid out of Notre Dame too that a lot of folks are talking about. So I'm looking at the defensive end, but it'll be fun, folks. The idea that we're going to have the draft here in Cleveland. I know a lot of people got tickets. They were offering for the NFL Live event. I think a lot of folks got the tickets thinking that they would be invited to the actual draft part of it, but those tickets are just for the events, the games, the activities that are outside of the actual draft. They are going to be the Browns did, and I think all the other NFL teams came out with a questionnaire to their season ticket holders, answered that the other day, asking if I would be interested in being selected as a small group of fans to be a fan, to be selected to go to this draft because of COVID. You've got to have your vaccines by then and all that. So answered that. So maybe, you never know. I might get lucky and get those tickets to actually be at the actual draft event starting Thursday night. I was looking to see when the season schedule was going to be released, because usually the NFL releases their schedule in mid to late April, right before the NFL draft. But because of COVID this year, and because of the NFL adding that 17th game to the season and protocols, and are we going to have full stadiums or are we not? I think we're leaning that way. I have my season tickets. I would love to be there at First Energy Stadium down on the shores of Lake Erie. But we'll see. I think the schedule release now, they're going to postpone it until after the draft, probably the second or third week in May, which for us Browns loyal fans, we'd love getting that schedule and then dissecting it and trying to say, okay, this is going to be a win. This is going to be a loss, loss, win, win. And we're already starting to make those decisions in May. So that schedule will be released soon, but not soon enough. Okay, last but not least, we're going to leave you with the did you know info, going back a little bit on college basketball. Did you know that Baylor Bears, they've had some great teams over the years. They were especially strong. They had a great program back in the 50s and the 60s. But going back, this is a little info that has to do with, it's not a great nugget of information because it has to do with some tragedy. But back in 1927, the Baylor Bears basketball team, they were traveling down in Texas. They were in the Round Rock, Texas area. And back then, there were a lot of railroads and there were railroad crossings. And at those crossings, they didn't always have the crossing guards to protect, cars and buses from traveling over the tracks, especially if a train was coming. So in this instant for the Baylor Bears, unfortunately, they were driving. It was a misty, kind of an overcast, ugly afternoon or evening. I think it was dark. The driver of the bus did not stop at the tracks. And unfortunately, their bus, the Baylor Bear bus in 1927, was struck. 10 of the players and the students that were on the bus traveling together were killed, unfortunately, in that incident. That incident, then you had several other incidents that happened about a decade later in 1939. There was an incident up in Utah that involved a school bus, had a group of students, about 35, 40 students, and they had a similar situation. There was a blinding snowstorm. There were not crossing marks there to stop the traffic. The bus did not stop, and it continued, and it got hit by this train. Unfortunately, 25 kids were killed, unfortunately, in that incident. So because of those instances, like the one that with Baylor and this one that happened in Utah, the United States government started, and specific states started prohibiting, they started building crossing gates, and they also required, buses and other large, trucks and whatnot to, stop at the tracks, open up their doors to listen and to look for trains. So that's kind of, that all happened because of what happened back in 1927 with the Baylor Bears basketball team. And then there were other tragedies that happened closer to into the late 1930s. So very kind of a sad bit of did you know, but started reading that about the Baylor Bears and how they had a connection to that law that we have enacted. So when you're in a bus with, and I've been an educator for years, the bus stops and you tell your students to quiet down and there shouldn't be any talking. The bus driver opens their door. That all started way back, almost 100 years ago because of those unforeseen tragedies. So did you know? All right, folks, I hope you have a very good rest of your Thursday evening. we are going to finish our painting here in our house. My son Grant, we're going to get that big windmill put up in his bedroom. We're excited to be doing that. He's excited. Until then, we've got the NFL draft coming up in about a month. And well, actually less than a month. It's April 29th up on the shores of Lake Erie. And right now the Cavs I'm watching here, we're in the second quarter. I think we might be going to halftime. Yep, we're going to halftime, folks. And I'm not sure what the score is. I'm waiting. They're on a kind of a commercial break. Oh, we're up. Cavs are up. High scoring first half. The Cavs are up 65-61. I'm so excited, right? You know, Kevin Love is there. Matthew Dellavedova is playing for the Cavs. One more, that's before I let you go, just one little bit of information there, you know, with the Cavs. I know Cavs are struggling. There were 18 wins, 32 losses. I just find social media so hilarious. And I'm on social media a lot, and I'll share my thoughts and whatnot. And I'm wrong half the time, like yesterday, but I think my negativity still brought the Indians that win. But getting back to the Cavs, they were showing a highlight. Some person out there in social media land was trying to give a dig to the Cavs and how pathetic the Cavs are for giving up on the Cavs' former player, Kevin Porter Jr. Kevin Porter Jr. was drafted by the Cavs, played for the Cavs, and then was released earlier this year because, he was throwing temper tantrums in the locker room, and he was just immature. He's an immature kid. So they traded him to the Houston Rockets. Well, they showed some highlight yesterday of Kevin Porter getting a steal and then dunking the ball on the other end, and talking about how, well, at least his kid's not in Cleveland and he's not a loser. Well, let me remind you, whoever you are who posted that on social media, you're just being stupid. But the Houston Rockets are terrible. They're 14 wins and 37 losses. The Cavs aren't much better. They're 18 wins and 32 losses. But before you start spewing stuff that's just stupid, you might get your facts straight. So there you go. I'll leave you with that, folks. I hope you have a great evening. Thanks again for watching the show. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. You can follow me at jclevelandpod at gmail.com is our email. Getting many more followers. Appreciate that. Trying to give away various Cleveland paraphernalia. So be on the lookout for that. Some freebie stuff. I always like to do that. We also are on Zazzle.com, where you can purchase Johnny Cleveland merchandise. Again, it's Zazzle.com. Type in Johnny Cleveland Podcast. All right, folks. Happy Thursday evening. And remember, folks, to keep smiling.